all of you probably are involved somehow in the Solvency II process. So you know that you have, at the end of the process, you have a lot of data. You know how much time you spend to collect those data. And you also know that, I mean, the format that you use to release those numbers or those figures to the regulators are pretty much not usable to make any kind of analysis. And also you know that there are a lot of data. So you know that probably you're already faced with the problem and say, okay, but what makes sense to analyze? Because we have a lot of numbers, but we cannot really extract information from there. This is how we started to think to this product, this prepackaged dashboard. And as many of our, let's say, prepackaged software, prepackaged solution, we try to partner with the top players in the market. So for this first release, we partnered with Generali, that is now our, let's say, probably our premium customers in terms of insurance in Italy, and with ANIA. ANIA is the Association of Italian Insurance Company, and they cover something like the 90% of the market in terms of premium share. So they are quite well represented in all of your companies, especially if you are an Italian company. And we collaborate with them to give to this product a business focus, but also an analysis focus. So we partner with the people that day by day work with Solvency II data in order to get information for the business and get information for the analysis. Well, so the main outcome is that we thought we built a dashboard that is able to support the top management and also support any working group in the Pillar 3 activities, meaning that they can use the dashboard to analyze their data, or they can use the dashboard just to prepare, let's say, presentation of the data that are pretty much static. So if you have, for example, a kind of presentation based on Solvency II data that you prepare, for example, on a regular basis, let's say any 3 months, you can use and embed this presentation in our Solvency prepackaged solution, and we will see how. Why ClickSense? Well, the starting point of all of this project was we want to build something that is usable and can generate value. So in a recent Gartner research shows that the usability of a software in a certain way, the self-service software, there is a linear correlation between the self-service software and the ability to produce value. So we don't want to create something really static. We want to create something that the user and the end user is able to customize and change to create his own reports. So he's able to, for example, ask something to the system that is not that is not already in the dashboard. So, like for example, they want to know they want to create visualization on data that are in the Solvency II solution, but they are not, let's say, represented yet in dashboard. And the other thing is that we want to make sure that the presented data are reliable, because sometimes happen, and you know, if you use Excel, you know that when you do your own analysis, when you deal with like personal productivity products, the main danger there is what is the data source, and how can I ensure that from the start of the process to the end of the process, I have reliable data? How can I certify my data? That's why we choose ClickSense, because we can easily put ClickSense on top of the Solvency II data model in Tagetik, and so we can create a process that goes from the data collection to the visualization, and we can trace the data along all the process. We can say this data is certified. We can exactly say from where a data is coming from. So that for us is the perfect combination. So we can have a tool that is easy to use for the end user, that help you to create your own reports, but also a tool that with the certification and of the fact that what you are showing, the numbers that you are providing to your managers or to the market are reliable and are certified and are exactly the same that you use for your regulatory reporting in a few minutes. So actually, the dashboard is composed of several sections. There is a summary data page that mostly collects all the meaningful information of your business, a balance sheet section, a non-fund section, specific focuses on technical provisions, assets, and cover. But the thing is that all of, and we will see it later, the main thing is that here all those things are in a certain way related. So for example, you can say, well, this is my technical provision for the marine line of business. Show me, for example, some meaningful insights, for example, for premiums for the same line of business. And the other thing is that you have all of the Solvency II data in it, meaning that, for example, and we will see that in the asset section, you are able to check each single asset, and you're able to select each single asset in order to have a really granular analysis of your data. Customization. Well, we briefly spoke of that before, but obviously this is a prepackaged solution, which means that for the prepackaged parts, so for the dashboard that we ship with the product and also for the data model, Tagetik is in charge of maintaining the same changes in the EIOPA regulation. And obviously, it will fit the Tagetik prepackaged solution for Pillar 3. But on the other end, users will have the chance to customize the solution, meaning they can create their own specific dashboards. So we basically will do exactly the same that we do for our prepackaged solutions. So we will present the data in a way that will be more or less the same for the dashboard. So also the custom visualization that you built will not be affected in any of the changes of the regulator. Obviously, if the field doesn't exist anymore, you can rely on that visualization, but that's easy. And we also follow the same milestones of the Solvency II Pillar 3 prepackaged solution, meaning that we will migrate the prepackaged solution and dashboard in Qlik all together to Tagetik 5 at the end of 2017. This is the main, let's say, the main page or the starting point of our dashboard. And this is the one that collects the summary data. You see a lot of objects in there, but just a few seconds to understand how the general architecture works. So on the left side, there is this navigation menu that allows you to navigate through the various sections. This selection panel allows you to point to a specific scenario and period in Tagetik, so in the same notation that you're familiar with, to point to a specific entity if you're a group, for example. Now we're analyzing our future insurance company. And you can also choose the number of periods that you want to show in your time series analysis. So for example, here I selected 4 of them, and here I have just 3 because I don't have any data for 2015. So this is just them. So I have March, June, and September. What are the main components of this first page? Well, actually, the most relevant one is regulatory solvency ratio. That is actually your solvency ratio, the one that you are familiar with. And here you can see that we have a green circle on the outer part. And this is because we met the most strict threshold of our risk appetite framework. Let's see, for example, what happens for a company that is not actually having the same. So I can select, for example, another company like our Stone Insurance, and as you see here, I have the Stone Insurance. My threshold is 150%, but for example, for this specific period, my company didn't met that one. So let's move back to the 2000 to March. So let's move to March. And now what's showing up here is the fact that you matched the 130%, but you were not able to match the 150%. So yellow light, and the live indicator here shows you how much is the effort that you have to, or I mean, how much is the percentage that you have to add to your 148% to get the 150%. So let's go back to our, let's say, more well-performing company. And here, I mean, I think it's clear that here you have the trend of your regulatory solvency II ratio. So here you have, for example, that, and you see that it's slightly decreasing over time. And so you may ask, okay, but why? Because we see from here, for example, that our total eligible own funds are pretty much stable. It's minus 0.1%, so and decreased by something like 4 million over 7 billion or so. So the reason why is because the SCR increased by 2.1% for the last month. If we want to make sure that what's going on our eligible own funds, we can also drill the dashboard here and see, for example, that our tier 1 capital is decreasing while our tier 2 and tier 3 is increasing. We can also enlarge the dashboard to have a more clear view. So as we said, tier 1 is decreasing, tier 2 and tier 3 are increasing. And the good thing is that okay, I'm doing my analysis, but I mean, I want also to communicate this analysis to someone. On top of each of the objects, when you go and select all of them, you see that you have those bubbles here. And by clicking on the camera, you can take a snapshot of the status of where you are in that specific point. So let's say that, for example, I'm analyzing this specific entity. I can say, well, this is interesting. I want to take a snapshot and comment that in a meaningful way, like decreasing regulator solvency ratio, and save it. Okay, so let's try to focus on the balance sheet now, because we know that our solvency II ratio is decreasing, so we want to see what happens to our balance sheet. So we can just click on the balance sheet section, and in the balance sheet section, I have the full balance sheet that if I want, I can also enlarge using the here. Just 1 second. Okay. Wait. If I want, I can enlarge this and have my total asset, total liabilities, and also have my excess of asset over liabilities. So if I want, I can collapse this just to have a clear view of just the total assets. And here I have the total assets versus liabilities in percentage. So I can say, for example, that my percentage of total excess of asset over liabilities is decreasing over time. This is an interesting thing. And from the visual legend here, I also noticed that my cash and cash equivalent got decreasing since the last period, because from here I have my data at this point in time, the period before, 2 periods before, and so on, because I selected to show 4 different periods from here. And let's see, for example, what happened to my investments. Oh, that's cool. I see that, for example, my cash and cash equivalent decreased, but my deposits increased more or less of the same thing. And let's say, for example, let's have a focus, for example, on my investment. So I can just select the investment from here. And as you can see, this change the visualization here. Now I have a visualization that is focused just on the assets part and just on the investment. So, for example, if I want to see, for example, what's going on with my bonds, for example, I can click on bonds, and this is the composition of my bonds investment. So most of them are government bonds, then I have some corporate and structured notes. And here I can have also the same in value. And I notice that, for example, the structured notes decrease and the corporate bonds increase. That is also shown here because here I have the trend over time of what I selected. So, for example, these are my collateral securities, these are my corporate bonds, then government bonds and structured notes. So, and also here, if I want, I can take a picture and put that same information in a kind of presentation. That is something that we will see at the end. The next step is, okay, I know more or less what's going on with my market value balance sheet. I want to deep focus on my assets. I want to understand what's going on with my assets. So I can go to the asset section. And here in the asset section, I have a more deep focus on just the assets, but just the assets that have the CIC indication. So I can split my asset in corporate bonds, property, equities, investment funds, and government bonds. But I can also do some other interesting things, like, for example, I want to split my asset by issuer sector. So I can, for example, select just the assets that are from public administration. And most of them will be bonds, I guess. Yes, so they are bonds. And from here, I also have the distribution of my assets by issuer country, which means that here I have a scale that tells me that, for example, most of them are from Italy. I can zoom on it and see that also in Europe things doesn't change a lot, meaning that if I, for example, restrict my analysis to just Europe, that is something that I can actually do just by clicking on the lasso, and then selecting Europe, for example. Here we go. Okay, now I'm just analyzing Europe, but I see that Italy is really the most relevant one. Okay, I can say, well, I know that Italy is the issue. Okay, let's remove Italy and see how is the real. Let's remove the outlier and see what happens. So I remove the outlier. And I can see that in Europe, there is the second relevant one is Spain. So I mean, it's reasonable that I bought a lot of of Italian debit, but I also bought a lot of Spain debit. That's something that I can easily see from the map here. Or I can also say, well, let's focus on the entire market in the planet. I want to remove Italy because I know that Italy is is an outlier. But the thing that I can do is, okay, show me everything but Italy. Here we go. And then this is the entire distribution without Italy. If I want to do the same with any other country, for example, I don't want, for example, public administration, but these are my assets all over the world without Italy. So, for example, I can do the same, for example, for manufacturing. And I see that if I remove Italy, my issuer sectors likely change. Now, the first in class is the financial and insurance companies. So this also tells me that I have a lot of assets in Italian bonds, but if I remove those, my main focus are on financial and insurance companies. But I can be even more precise. I can say, well, I have all of my assets, but I would like to go in detail. I would like to, for each specific asset, to understand how my asset portfolio is composed. So here I have a quick overview of all the assets. So, and I can perform exactly the same selection as before. So I can, for example, select investments, and these are all my investments, select bonds, and those are my bonds. And here I have a table that shows me, for example, that all of them are public administration of financial and insurance activities. This is the issuer group. This is the country. This is the issuer name. But and this is the value. But I want to add more insights to this. I want to add more columns. So let's say, for example, that I'm not looking at a specific asset, but I'm looking at assets that are from a specific issuer. So let's say that, for example, here I want to just the one from UniCredit, whatever it is. So I can select all the UniCredit assets like that. And there are 476 million. Oh, well, I have some of them are issued in Italy, some not. But I want the list of those assets. So I can go here and say, well, add the field, add the dimension, and add, for example, the item title. Here we go. So this is the full list of all the assets that I have from UniCredit. And let's say that, because most of them probably are bonds, let's say, well, I want something more granular. So, for example, let's go in the advanced edit mode where I can also change the order. So, for example, I want to put the asset value at the end, and for example, I want to add also the maturity date. That is probably relevant for my analysis. Here we go. And I want to again put the asset value at the end. Here we go. Now we have this, and obviously I can go and customize even more, but for example, from the same table, I can ask the system, say, well, show me everything that comes from manufacturing, for example, manufacturing. And these are all the assets from manufacturing, the value, the maturity date, and the item title itself. I can say, for example, let's show me what is going to mature in 2017. That's it. So, and if I go back, the selection is still there. And the good thing is that if I go back to the asset section, I have the same analysis, but now it's focused on just the manufacturing. And as you can see here, I don't have anything from Italy, but I have a lot of assets in different countries. And if I want, I can just say, well, show me, for example, also the credit quality step of those assets. And I see that most of them are credit quality step 2. I have some of 1 and some 3 here. And I think that you can pretty much understand that we have a lot of information here. So the first question that arises me now is, how can I remember all of these things? Well, the good thing is that we have an online help feature. So if you click on that, you have an online help that tells you exactly what is in the page, exactly how to navigate the dashboard, exactly how the various items are calculated, starting from the code that you find in your Solvency II, in the Solvency file that you send to the regulator. So, for example, you can always say, well, oh, okay, this is the number. Let's show me. I know how it's calculated, so I can control and see if it's exactly the same number that I filed to the regulator, and also understand actually what the meaning of that number, because we want to be really precise, because some of them are not just numbers, but are KPIs, especially in the cover section. We want to make sure that you exactly understand the meaning of those KPIs. Okay, so we can reset, for example, the analysis here and remove all of our selection from the top panel. And then we can go to the other section, for example, own funds. And for the own funds, we have prepared 2 different sections. We have prepared 2 different sections because, you know, the own funds are pretty much relevant. So we want to make sure to cover, at least from the really beginning, most of the common questions that you might have. And here you see that we developed some KPIs just for this part. So the KPIs are shown on top, and are the reconciliation reserve over eligible own funds, the reconciliation reserve over the SCR, and so on. And the thing, as I said, you can find all the definition here. So you click on the online help, you have the help that is popping up, you have the description of what is showing up, the business meaning of this KPI, and how it's calculated based on the report. And this for all the KPIs, for all the information that you have. The other thing that we think that makes sense to put in this on-fund focus is the fact that we want to show, for example, how numbers are evolving to other numbers. Meaning, for example, you have a specific section that on the reconciliation reserve, and because the reconciliation reserve it's like balancing term, you don't really know what goes in there, because it's more or less like you know that you have the foreseeable profits in there, but you don't know exactly what are the other terms. We want to show, for example, how you can go from the excess of asset over liabilities to the reconciliation reserve. So you know that there's a part that are the foreseeable dividends that you have to remove from your excess of asset, and you have to remove the other basic own funds, the own shares, and so on. So you get to the reconciliation reserve, and and this is most relevant when we talk to how we go from the excess of assets to liabilities to the eligible own funds, and that's something that we detailed in the other section. In the other section, you can see, for example, that we described how you move from your excess of assets over liabilities to your eligible own funds. And so from this waterfall chart here, you see that what are your subordinated liabilities in basic own fund, your foreseeable dividends, your deductions, and so on. The eligibility filters that apply, meaning the entire capital and things like that. And this is exactly how you get to your eligible funds. And so comparing month by month, you can see, for example, that, for example, for this month, you have a lot of deduction. Last month, you have less deduction, and analyze why. And this is also easy to do if you look, for example, at the table below, because below you have the exact same thing that you can see in your in the file that you sent to the regulator. So you have the amount of your basic own funds by tier, and if you want, you can also isolate the two components, restricted and not restricted, of tier 1. And on the right, you have the trend of the tier for end of eligible own funds and ancillary of fund. So you know, for example, that in absolute value, your eligible own funds are quite decreasing, but in terms of percentage, for example, that is something that you can do in all of the charts. You can see that the most decreasing one is probably tier 1, and while tier 2 is increasing. This is exactly what we saw at first glance in the summary page. And if you go on each single connection, you can instantly see, for example, also here, that how is the difference. So for example, here is the 0.3%, here is minus 2.1%. And also we can see from here that the tier 3 capital is also increasing of 1.1%. So this, and I know the own funds topic is really it's a really huge topic. So we will be more than happy to hear from you what are the relevant KPIs that you want to see. For example, in the first page, on an additional page, we will seriously hungry to understand with you what the best way to analyze this data. After that are probably the main section. We have also a specific focus on technical provision and cover. So for technical provision, we prepared something that we called Cockpit. And the Cockpit basically allows you to understand from first glance where my technical provision are increasing and where my technical provision are decreasing. So for example, here, and let me enlarge this in order to get the full picture. For example, here I know that my total technical provision are decreasing 116 millions, minus 0.8%. But some of them are increasing, some of them are decreasing. So for example, my medical expenses insurance are increasing, my other motor insurance are decreasing. And here I can also have a breakdown to understand if the increasing or decreasing are because the claims provision, the premiums provision, or the risk margin. And here I have the same view, but from here I can understand what is the portion of each single line of business in my business. So, for example, this is probably mostly a non-life company. So it will you will see here most from motor vehicle. But the thing is that it's not easy to compare those numbers in absolute value. And it's not easy just because, I mean, there is one that is bigger than the other. But if I want, I can go in percentage, and now it's easy to compare because I compare apples with apples. I rescale everything to 100%. So I can see, for example, that from most of them, I have a lot of premiums provision versus the claims provision. But for others, they are almost all of them are claims provision. And here I have the trend of all of the components. So, for example, here from here I can say, well, let me compare why my the composition of my medical expenses versus my other motor insurance. Well, they are actually not performing in the same way, but I can see that, for example, here the claims provision are definitely bigger than what I have in the other motor insurance. And here I can also see that, for example, for the combination of two, at a certain point in time, the claims provision became greater than the premiums provision. And this is a kind of knowledge that I can extend to any of those. So, for example, I can add, for example, the marine picture in the same way. I can add the marine to the picture in the same way, and it automatically gets updated. And I can, for example, remove everything and go back to the initial visualization. So this is a quite powerful tool of analysis that can give you, at the first glance, the full picture, but altogether can give you the trend and the absolute value of each single line of business. And obviously, if I'm in a composite insurance company, I can do the same for the provisional life. So here I have the life portion of business of this company, and I have actually the same. The relevant difference is that I don't have claims provision and premium provision. I have just the net best estimate altogether. But everything behaves exactly in the same way. So, for example, for other life insurance, I know that the risk margin is the most relevant part. More or less the same. I can follow more or less the same approach with the cover analysis. So with the cover analysis, I have we focus on the cover analysis to what we think are the most relevant KPIs for this part, and the really big part of this dashboard is on the loss ratio and the expense ratio and the combined ratio, because those are just profitability measures, and so can really tell me how my company is performing. And from here, I have, for the specific point in time, I have the loss ratio and the expense ratio. I have the distribution of the expense ratio versus loss ratio, meaning that this is the average of loss ratio, that is what is shown here. This is the average of the expense ratio, that is what I showed here. And this is also the loss ratio and expense ratio of my company in total. But I have a lot of line of business that maybe not all of them are performing in the same way. So what I can do is say, well, let me see, for example, what happened for marine. That is a company that has an expense ratio that is a bit bigger than the average, and it has a very let's say a very big loss ratio. And what I can see is that, yeah, that's true. That's true that the loss ratio is really big, the expense ratio is really big. But what I can see from the trend here is that I've been able to reduce that combined ratio, the combination of the two, from 423% to 245%. And how I did that? Well, the most part was did here because I reduced that by 113%. I did a great work here because I reduced by 85 percentage points here. And then it increased a little bit in the last month, but this means that I did a really good job to decrease this combined ratio for that specific line of business. On the right side, I have a specific analysis on the ceded ratios. So I want to analyze how my company is exposed to other companies. So how much of my business I'm not really responsible, let's say, for, but I paid our other companies to cover my risk. And from here, I can see, for example, that for marine and aviation, that is what we were looking before, most of them, say 44%, is part of my ceded business, while the average for my company is ceded 2%. So if I analyze, for example, again, for the ceded part, the marine and aviation, I see that I did also the same job for marine and aviation that I did for the loss ratio combined ratio. So I probably reduced the ceded part of my business, and that allowed me to reduce also the loss ratio and the expense ratio. So it's something that I have to evaluate if I want to perform the same kind of activity of cost reduction to other line of business. If we move then to the cover part for the life business, now we can see that the analysis is quite different. We don't have exactly the same KPIs because some of them are not really relevant in the life business, like for example the loss ratio. So what we have here is the net cash flow that allows me to understand how really in terms of money what's going on, and I see that well the cash flow is increasing, and I have the cash flow by single line of business, and here I can understand, okay, this is the KPI that shows me what is the cash flow by written premium, so divided by written premium. So it tells me more or less, okay, what's the impact of my premiums in the cash flow, and this is decreasing. So which means that my cash flow is not really, my cash flow is not increasing as my premiums are increasing. Here I have the same kind of analysis for the variation of the technical provisions. So I can see from here that for my technical provisions are really decreasing, and they are more or less, and from the trend here, I can see they are pretty much stable compared with the premiums I earn. And here I have the same thing that I have for the no life technical analysis for cover in terms of expenses. So here I have a ratio that tells me how much are the expenses for my line of business compared to my written premiums. And I see from here that the overall expenses are increasing over the written premium. So it's something that I have to pay attention, because this is a quite insightful measure of my profitability. Well, we have seen a lot of things here, but now the question is, how can I put all of this together in a presentation, or just to let's say communicate something with this data? And this is where the stories come into play. With ClickSense and with this dashboard, you have the possibility to create your own stories that are more or less like a PowerPoint presentation, but they are bind to the live data. So, for example, here, this is a story that I created for this demo for the Future Insurance Company. As you can see, it's played just in the same interface that you use to play to play with your dashboard, but it behaves like a PowerPoint presentation. So you can create a cover page and now say here and add some narrative and say these are exactly the same picture that I used that I took before using the camera button. So here you have exactly the same numbers that are linked to my original presentation. And here I can also add some narrative saying our solvency ratio is slightly decreasing, our eligible funds are pretty much stable, and things like that. But the good thing is that I can do even more and say, well, I can put, for example, my balance sheet figures here. But the interesting thing is that they're not just pictures. They are related to the source data, which means that, for example, from here I can say, okay, bring me to the source. Show me how did you get those data. And the system is pushing me back to the original dashboard. And from here, I can do things like analyze data by myself. So, well, this is the actual situation, but show me, for example, what's going on with bonds. Okay, bonds, I know this is the ratio. Okay, no, okay, I can go back to the presentation. And this is something that you can do for from any specific point in the presentation. Like, for example, here, this is the breakdown by issuer sector. Okay, but show me how you get those data. And more relevant, this is more relevant from here. Show me the exact same filter that you put in there. And I see from here that, for example, those are just the breakdown, but for investments and not for all of my assets. And if I want, I can go back to the presentation in the same way. And the other interesting thing is that you can really link the dashboard in the data. So, for example, here, this is a live page. I can just, in my presentation, okay, those are the data, but they're not static data. I can say, for example, from here, I want to see just the investments. So I can navigate data from here. And from here, I want to see just bonds, for example, and all the dashboard updates. And if I want, I can go to the sheets exactly in the same way. So I can go back here to the sheet. I have the same visualization. And when I want, and I'm done with my analysis, I can return to my presentation. Well, and the good thing is that creating those kind of presentation is easy like create a PowerPoint. So if I want to add, for example, a new dashboard, a new page, I can just add the title, for example, add some narrative. So, for example, comments. I can, for example, embed a picture, a logo, or like the Tagetik logo, for example. And I can take one of the screenshots that I took before, like, for example, I want to put this one. Here we go. And if I want, I can also slightly change this picture because, again, it's not a static picture, it's data. So if I want, for example, from here, I can say, well, I'm not really interested in titles because I want to change the title. I want to remove the label because of the x-axis because I'm not really interested in that. I want just to show the fact that it's decreasing, and I don't want to put the values because I want just to highlight the fact that it's decreasing, but I'm not allowed to show the values, and that's it. So here we go, and we are done. So it's really easy, like, to create a PowerPoint. And if you want, you can also say to the system, well, for example, if I have a large time series, I can also to the system, okay, show me, highlight for me the lowest value, or again, highlight for me which is the highest value. So it's a pretty useful tool that you can use to present your data, embed your data in the dashboard so they are reliable. They are together with the dashboard. So every time you update the dashboard, the same data gets updated. And the other good thing is that with the same procedure, the thing you can do is to, I mean, at a certain point in time, you have to present those data. And the thing that you can do is say, well, I'm fine with this presentation. Now, what I can do is to go here and say, well, export this presentation to PDF or PowerPoint. And this will become static presentation. So it will be not linked to the data anymore, but you will have your presentation ready. And you can go and send that by email or whatever. We have an answer that is, in terms of user rights, what we have. Okay, so in terms of user rights, well, this prepackaged solution inherits the exact same user rights that you have in the Tagetik Solvency II solution. So, which means that you can profile your users in the Tagetik Solvency II solution, and the same profile will be available in the dashboard. Which means that, for example, if a user is restricted to see just one specific entity or just a subset section like balance sheet or cover, it will get the exactly same profile in the dashboard. So it will be able to see just the subset of data that you choose in Tagetik. Okay, we have another question that is how data is loaded into the Qlik dashboard. Is directed to database or via Excel? Well, the answer is a database connection. So it will just take the data model from Tagetik through a database connection. So you don't need to export any Excel or anything. Okay, we have another question that is Tagetik Solvency II Pillar 3 solution required? Well, that is a good question. So the thing is that we can put this product as a standalone product or as a companion to the Solvency II Pillar 3 solution, meaning that in Tagetik we developed a procedure to directly import the file, the XBRL file that you send to the regulator into our Tagetik data model, which means that you are able to, let's say, produce your XBRL file with another software, assuming that it makes sense, and just have the dashboard, and then feed the dashboard with that XBRL file through our specific ETL in Tagetik that populates the Tagetik data model starting from the XBRL file. So you have two options. You can you can choose to produce your XBRL file with Tagetik and put the Qlik Sense dashboard on top of your Solvency II Pillar 3 solution, or you can just use the Solvency II Pillar 3 dashboard and use the Tagetik process to acquire your XBRL file and populate the data model. Okay. Well, I think we are pretty much done with the question. If you have, okay, yeah, I think we're pretty much done with the question. If you have any other questions, you can send your questions by email, and we will be more than happy to answer during the next days. Okay, so just one more minute. Okay, okay. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining and attending, and see you. Bye.